Hi, this is Paula with iSound Norwich, and I want to take a few minutes today to talk to buyers out there and explain their exclusive right to represent buyer agreement. And this one that I'll be talking about today, as always, I let you know I'm licensed in Connecticut, so this one applies to Connecticut because they do vary from state to state. So it's a very simple contract, really. The top part is going to have the buyer information, their name and address. It's going to have the broker name and address. And then it's going to have what kind of property you're looking for, residential, multifamily, land, and where that property is located. So you can pick one or all, however many apply to that particular buyer. And then the area, usually we just say southeastern Connecticut because they're not sure which town maybe they'd like to be looking in. There are exceptions to that. I do have a client that's a referral from another agent, and that client does not want to sign a contract with me. He wants to sign a contract for the day. He'll text me and say, Paul, I saw this on Zillow. Can you take me to see it? And I'll say, sure. And then he knows when we meet at the property, he is going to sign this buyer rep because by law, I cannot take him to see any property that is not, I work for EXP. If it is not an EXP listing, he has to have a buyer rep agreement signed, even if it's just for that one day, which is what we do. We'll say residential, 123 any street in the town, and then the agreement term is for just that day. Now, however, if this is a buyer that I'm working with and I'm going to see them through from finding the house to close, that would be 3 months typically, because it gives us time to find the house and then go through close, which takes about 60 days. So from there, it explains that it's going to say right here, the buyer is responsible for compensation and will be at either a dollar amount or a percentage. Well, two things about that. One is in Connecticut, the buyer doesn't pay the commission, the seller does, or landlord if you're the tenant. But we fill that out and put 3% because it says right here, it talks about going to see a FSBO, which is a for sale by owner. Okay, so what happens is if I'm representing you and you say, oh, Paul, I drove by this house, it's for sale by owner, I really want to go see it. I'll say, okay, let me have the number, and I'll call the owner and I'll tell the owner I'm an agent. I have a client who wants to see your home. My percentage is 3%. Would you be willing to pay that 3%? When the seller says no, excuse me, then the buyer, you have to make sure you make them aware again that you signed the contract that says if it's for sale by owner and they're not willing to pay the commission, you are responsible for the 3% commission. So that's that part of the contract. And then it goes down to explain some of the broker's duties, that we shall act solely on the best interest of the buyer at all times, that we'll use a reasonable effort to locate and to present to buyer homes that they would be qualified for, that prior to the buyer making any offer, the broker shall disclose any material fact known by the broker about the home. The buyer shall submit, the broker shall submit to buyer all offers and counter offers until acceptance. And then it gives the buyer's duties. So the buyer shall notify the broker of all past and current contracts with another real estate agent, because if you're under contract with an agent, you cannot sign a contract with me unless that contract is expired or that agent signs a release form and releases you from their contract. Okay, so, and then it goes on just to say a few more things. The buyer shall cooperate with the broker and be responsibly available to see properties. The buyer agrees to protect, defend, and hold broker harmless from the claims of liability and expenses, including reasonable, where did I leave off here? Reasonable attorney fees arising from a claim of any other broker for compensation. And you're going to initial the bottom of that page, and then it's going to go on over here to some other terms. The buyer agrees that the broker may represent other buyers, because I don't work just with you, you work with other brokers. The buyer understands and agrees that the broker may represent both a buyer and a seller in the purchase of a property. Let's see. And the buyer is notified that information concerning the residence address of a person convicted of a crime may be available from law enforcement agencies or the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. Okay, now lien of rights. The real estate broker may be entitled to certain lien rights pursuant to Section 2325A of the Connecticut General Statutes. Fair housing. This agreement is subject to the Connecticut General Statutes prohibiting discrimination in commercial and residential real estate transactions. It is unlawful under federal and or state law to discriminate on the basis, and Connecticut has a few more than the federal, on the basis of race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, sex, familial status, disability, mental learning, or physical, lawful source of income, material status, civil union status, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, veteran status as a victim of domestic violence, or erased criminal history record information. And then it goes on to say use of electronic records. So this contract may be executed in one or more counterparts, and counterparts may be exchanged by electronic transmission, including by email, each of which will be deemed an original, but all of which together constitutes one and the same instrument. So that's your buyer represent agreement. It's very important that you go through all of this with your agent, because again, it varies from state to state. And just in the list of all the things under fair housing, Connecticut has so many more protected status than other states do. And it's important that you know your rights and what you're responsible for and what your agent is responsible for. So if you have any questions, please ask them down below in the comments. And as always, if you found this useful and helpful in any way, please share, like, and subscribe. Thank you.